A very good morning to everyone joining us here today in person and also virtually. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you on behalf of WRI India to our annual flagship event, Accelerating Clean Energy, or ACE. ACE brings together energy sector experts, policymakers, and practitioners to discuss fresh insights into ongoing and emerging research streams on global energy transitions and their implications on India. My name is Lanvin Concesso from the WRI India Energy Program, and I will be taking you through the events of the day. At the outset, I would like to inform you that today's event is a hybrid event. So, as a few of our speakers and participants are also joining us virtually, this will be a recorded event and will be uploaded later on our YouTube channel as well as to our website. I would also request everyone to please put their phones in silent mode during the rest of the event. Few of our speakers who are joining us online are requested to keep themselves on mute when not speaking, and would request them to use the chat box for any technical issues if they face. Those who have not registered yet, please do so at the desk outside so that we can contact you for future events as well. You can also scan the QR codes on your desk for event details and the agenda. And for any feedback, please do drop us an email at indiaenergy@wri.org. This two-day power-packed event will discuss multiple broad themes, from building an inclusive and equitable energy transition, on what the opportunities and challenges are facing this transition, especially in terms of implementation and the different technologies needed for an economy-wide decarbonization, such as battery on the supply side, but also buildings on the demand side. This is the fifth edition of ACE, and we at WRI India are looking forward to these discussions as India looks to achieve its ambitious targets of carbon neutrality by 2070 and nearer term targets on renewable energy and the sustainable development goals. So to kick us off, I'd like to welcome Mr. Bharat Jairaj to set the scene for the next 2 days of ACE. Bharat is the Executive Director of the Energy Program at WRI India. He also leads the Energy Governance Practice at WRI's Equity Center.
Thank you, Lanvin, and welcome all of you to ACE, Accelerating Clean Energy. This is the fifth time we are doing this, and it's meant to be a space where we bring partners, both in government, outside government, private sector, civil society, researchers together to talk about the most important issues facing the energy transition in India. We're also glad we have some of our colleagues from other WRI offices who are here today, and we'll also hopefully get to hear a bit from their experiences. Now, like with most large events, we have a uncanny ability for things to keep changing. So those of you who are looking at the agenda, you might have noticed that the agenda wasn't actually up till last night. And then since then also we've had a few changes, which is not unexpected, but unfortunate, I think, at this stage. We did anticipate some of this, but hopefully it won't impact the remaining sessions as much. But the Indian Parliament is in session from today. Tomorrow the budget is going to be announced. And so some of our dignitaries and partners and colleagues are unable to join us given the competing demands on their time. But I'm really glad that all of you are here and that several of you have also joined us online. I'm also glad that despite his rather grueling schedule, the Honorable Minister of State for Power and New and Renewable Energy, Shripad Naik, has actually recorded a message and shared this with us, which we will play for you a little later. Let me now introduce the experts who will join us in this in the inaugural session. And perhaps as I call you, you can come up on this dais. First is Mr. Pramod Rao. He's the Executive Director at the Securities and Exchange Board of India, handling the Department of Debt and Hybrid Securities, Enquiries and Adjudication Department, Quasi-Judicial Cell, and the Department of Economic and Policy Analysis. Pramod has an extensive experience in the Indian financial services sector, having worked for many years in the ICICI Group and was on the board of director of many of their companies, and also was their general counsel. Very glad that you could join us, Pramod. Unfortunately, Dr. Sukanya Chakrabarti, who was to join us from Kabul, had a personal situation and is not able to come. So I will then now invite Binu Parthan, who is actually joining us online. Binu is the Deputy Director of Country Engagements and Partnerships at IRENA. And he is responsible for supporting IRENA member countries, that's the International Renewable Energy Agency, the IRENA member countries on their energy transition. Is over 25 years of professional experience working in many countries. Prior to IRENA, those of us in this renewable energy space know Binu from his work at the Green Climate Fund, and prior to that at REAP, or the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Program, Partnership, sorry. He was also the executive director of IT Power India, which he co-founded and led. Welcome, Binu. Is he online? Oh, he's not. Oh. So much for my welcome. I'd also like to invite Mr. Mozaharul Alam to the dais. He's the acting head of UNEP India. He's been with UNEP since 2009. Prior to the UNEP, he served in the Ministry of Environment and Forests in the government of Bangladesh. He's coordinated the adaptation group of G77 in China during that period, has been a lead author for the IPCC fifth assessment report. I'm also going to invite two of my colleagues, Jennifer and Deepak, onto the stage. Jennifer is the Global Energy Program Director for WRI, and Deepak is the Deputy Director of the Energy Program. We will also be joined in a few minutes by Madhav Pai, who's CEO of WRI India. Madhav landed in Delhi airport about an hour and a half ago, and then 45 minutes later found himself back in the Delhi airport because of some rerouting that his cab driver did. And Madhav used to lead the transport work, so hopefully he'll be here soon. Right, so to just get us started, I'm going to first call on Deepak to share some perspectives of why WRI is doing ACE, or the Accelerating Clean Energy event, and what to expect over the next couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you, Bharat. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking time out and joining us today. So I'll just cover a brief about the context of ACE and why it fits in with WRI's work, and why we are also very glad to hear your thoughts and perspectives on this. So WRI's recently developed next phase of the strategy talks about people, climate, and nature framing. So therefore, all our interventions are geared up to address, to stay in the context of that framing. And within this, we will be driving transitions across three human-centered systems. One of them is energy, the other two being cities, food, land, and water. And supporting these shifts will be, transitions, enabling systems in climate, economics, finance, and equity and governance. And within energy, we have taken an approach of trying to decarbonize clean energy supply, energy demand, looking at how energy access can help equitable development, and also bring in a lens on governance, looking at critical minerals, for instance, supply chains of renewable energy technologies, and so on. Now, why is all this important in the Indian context? As you all know, a large part of India's energy demand is going to emanate in the future from the need to, maintain thermal comfort for a large segment of our population, timely and adequate irrigation for crops, and most important, I wouldn't say most important, equally important is ensuring reliability of power during extreme weather events. So the need to start planning for meeting all these demand requirements with clean supply is paramount. We also are aware that reliable electricity or energy supply is also crucial for the bottom strata of India's population economy, which is poor households, small farmers, MSMEs, rural healthcare centers, and so on. And amidst this rapid growth of the economy, which requires significant energy supply, the sustainability of the RE value chains itself is important. It shouldn't end up that renewable energy also starts to become yet another infrastructure behemoth, which starts to then start affecting the lives and has impact on people and nature. So in all this context, looking at mineral, from where the minerals are sourced for manufacturing of these renewable energy equipment, the recycling of these solar panels, wind turbines, etc. It is a critical question and best addressed now rather than park it many years down the line when it will become a huge problem to take care of. So with all this in mind, we also need to understand that while these are all technical aspects of the transition, we also need to look at the human element. For example, skilled workforce, particularly, for example, if you take the IC engines to EVs change, how is it that you're going to reskill the workforce? That is an important question which we'll face. How do we ensure that affordable finance comes in to facilitate these transitions across all these areas of work? And how do we enable legislative and regulatory frameworks? How are these going to get created? So over the next 1.5 days, a lot of these elements are going to be part of the agenda, and we hope you will participate, engage fully, and help enrich these discussions. We are again, I'm very grateful to all of you for taking time out and joining today. Welcome to ACE. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Deepak. And it's now my pleasure to welcome Mr. Pramod Rao, the Executive Director at the Securities and Exchange Board of India, for his special address. Over to you, sir.
Good morning to all of you. And indeed, thank you, WRI and Bharat. So what Bharat didn't mention is he's a senior of mine, and it's very, few juniors who can refuse what a senior asks. So indeed, that's partly why I'm here. The other is that really I appreciate these opportunities to actually be able to talk about what at least is our thinking at the securities market regulator. And indeed, for some portions of it, I am responsible. So I will try and both outline those and see how that links up to the ACE program and the agenda. So one, indeed, the green finance framework for us in our country has multiple components. There is the Reserve Bank, which is leading with the banking system, trying to do green deposits and green lending, so as to speak. Our sovereign green bonds have also got issued by the government, which are meant to be channeled into green activities. And finally, we have the corporate India, which is where SEBI comes in and plays a role, where we have 2-3 sort of interventions that we have done over the last few years that I'll delve into. The first is being a securities market regulator, it also means we are a disclosure-based regulator. So we require listed corporates to follow what we call the BRSR, or the Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting. And these standards require the top 1,000 listed companies to disclose certain information about their operations, enterprise, and so on, which has been in vogue for quite a few years. Last year, we made a different intervention, which was to require that not just that they disclose certain core information, but that the core information must also be reasonably assured, so as to speak. Which means that it wasn't going to be any more just a self-declaration, that a third party would sort of look at those disclosures and affirm whether that is in sync or not. There is a glide path prescribed. So beginning September this year, the top 150 companies start reporting BRSR core, and thereafter it will go on year by year until it encompasses all listed entities. To us, enhanced reliability based on reasonable assurance or assessment is expected to bolster the faith and confidence of the investors in the ESG disclosures. The issuers will also have to then avoid fluff and flowery statements or misleading or incorrect statements. The focus will be on the specific KPIs that are assessed and assured. Overall, the quality of data will therefore be higher. In a way, there is also what I would describe as saying that there is a recognition of the supply chain or the extended value chain, so as to speak, that supports enterprises. The current norms require that the BRSR core covers at least 75% of that supply chain. What we didn't want is that outsourcing or other arrangements sort of overcome these disclosure obligations, and hence even the value chain is captured within this. Apart from introducing BRSR core, SEBI has done two more interventions. One is that we were amongst the first countries in the world to actually bring in a regulatory framework for regulating ESG rating providers. And these same ESG rating providers have been required to actually look at the BRSR core and publish certain rating or scoring based on that core, so as to speak. What we expect is that has to factor in what is really the requirement of India as an emerging economy. That namely, our challenges will be different from that of the developed world, and therefore there needs to be a factoring in the scoring of the transition that India needs to have. So clearly, these challenges, including the dependency from fossil fuels to clean energy and so on, they are required to factor this into their scoring parameters. All of these core ESG rating, to our mind, will again enhance the credibility of those who rely on these ratings for their investment decisions or otherwise. Again, to us, there have been rating agencies or ERPs which are operating around the world. We have sort of put a framework within which they are also required to register with us if they especially deal with Indian corporates. The third element of BRSR core is really around the investment intervention. And what SEBI is required is that mutual fund schemes that are ESG oriented have to necessarily make sure that 60% of the investment heads into companies that have BRSR core. So I call this a triple play. So not only are corporates required to make disclosure which has got reasonable assurance, but ESG rating providers which are required to look at those data points. And finally, investments which are made by mutual funds, also sort of looking at these in the majority of their investments. Each of this, to us, leads corporate India hopefully into a better, brighter, verifiable space. And all of that will play into what we believe are the transition needs of this country. Separately, and this is the linkage far more for me than the first few sets that I talked about, is really purposive financing. And India for a long time has again had an extensive definition of green debt, securities that the corporates can issue. We in fact began that definition in 2017. It has since then got refreshed in 2021 and has got several elements which I feel again tie back into these couple of days that you're spending with WRI. Amongst them, climate change adaptation being funded to make infrastructure more resilient to impact of climate change and information support systems, such as climate observation and early warning systems, pollution prevention and control, circular economy, including recycling or upcycling. The concept, and somewhere I told my team we have to actually stop doing this, but we have, which is we have created an entire rainbow of bonds. So now we have blue bonds, we have yellow bonds, apart from the green bonds, which in any case are there. So blue bonds are really for around all sustainable water initiatives, And yellow bonds, no surprise, is about solar energy being funded by these bonds. And finally, to round up, like I said, India's own challenges is the concept of transition bonds, again embedded within the green bond definition. To us, the revamped definition is a signal to private sector about opportunities that are available even as they deal with climate change, and signal to the lenders, investors, as to what specifically India's needs are. These again reflect India's commitments to the greener economy, including the climate targets India has committed in the Paris deal and what constitutes our own national commitments. In keeping with the requirements of urban infrastructure, these green bonds can also be issued by the municipal corporations that issue municipal green bonds. And again, we have had issuances at least of 4 such municipalities which have leveraged this definition and garnered funds from the bond market. I'm also happy to report that as much as 93% of the funds raised as green bonds have really been towards the issuance, towards projects related to clean energy, largely renewables. We, however, need far more to happen. A recent report that we have come across says that the extent of funds India needs by 2030 for clean energy is roughly around $200 billion. Considering that we currently have bond issuances in the country in excess of 100 billion each year, it's not that it's insurmountable. But however, like I said, we need corporates to step up, we need investors to step up. And what we really need is actual credible projects. So this segues to me into the next part of what I wanted to cover. A lot of what we enable, like I said, we are a disclosure-based regulator. We have created all of these various frameworks. But essence of all of these, also for investor confidence and faith, is that we follow a trust but verify approach. To us, even when people issue green bonds, and as I mentioned, even for BRSR core, there's an expectation of reasonable assurance. In green bonds, again, for the first couple of years, we've said that there can be a comply or explain regime in terms of third-party reviewers assessing the green purpose and the green end use. But thereafter, from 2025 onwards, this becomes mandatory. So we, in fact, expect this third-party verifying to sort of, again, galvanize and avoid greenwashing or green, hushing that may be taking place. Some of the items that I wanted to conclude with, even as you explore the next couple of days, is really the following. One, energy underpins the entire economy. Its transition to clean energy would really boost our goals towards net zero and be the key initiative to address climate change. I believe as much as 70% of the economy can sort of move to green with just energy sort of addressing that. For corporate India, we believe whether it's the revised definition of green debt or yellow bonds, blue bonds, transition bonds, the frameworks exist and it's for them to seize the opportunities and move forward. For investment institutions or investors in general, the ESG investing norms that SEBI has created can be either adopted or adapted, and therefore will galvanize issuers to working off the same common touchstone. We also need to consider that in the absence of greenium or with green hushing taking place, which is when issuers want to do green projects but not necessarily disclose the same, we need to have some further incentives that are thought of. What those incentives can be and who should be providing, we'd welcome thoughts and inputs from this forum. I'll end with the point Janet Yellen made about green finance and carbon credits. Integrity of reporting and assessment needs to happen. Here again, if assessments go wrong or assessments are half-hearted or misleading, there will be regulatory intervention which will have to overcome such misreporting. With that, thank you once again, and looking forward to the deliberations here, also feeding into policy perspectives. Thanks.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Rao. And yeah, truly, I think you've made very clear the extent of financing that we really need for this clean energy transition. And I think before we move on to the next address, I would like to request our distinguished guests on stage to help us to formally launch this report, which is kept in front of you. The report is on critical minerals for India's clean energy transition. I'd also request the authors, Abhinav, Nidhi, Niharika, and Gautami, to please come on stage for the launch. So the paper, just as a brief, the paper looks at the critical mineral requirements for India's clean energy transition in its efforts to achieve its net zero commitments. The paper examines the vulnerabilities in India's critical mineral supplies and locates the country within the global political economy of critical minerals. So I'd like to request the guests to please stand up, open a copy, and I request the authors, if they're around, to also please come up on stage for a photo. Camera. Thank you, everyone. And I see Madhav is now here, so I would first like to actually invite Madhav on stage for his address. So Mr. Madhav Pai is the CEO of WRI India, and he has been with WRI since 2008 and is part of the Institute's founding team, and who has invested his energies to build this large, high-performance team at WRI that can support the design, implementation, and scaling up of pioneering solutions to India's complex challenges. So over to you, Madhav.
Thanks, Lanvin, and apologies. I was in a blue smart cab, so we were on a energy transition journey. It was the cab driver's first day. He didn't know how to read maps, and at some point of time, we turned back and we're going back to the airport. And it was his first day. He was nervous. He was scared, and I think highlights the people part of our energy transition, right? I mean, I think I could have been yelling at him at some point of time. I decided to navigate, and I think this is, he's just been recruited on the job day one, and I think just highlights how important I think it is for us to sort of bring people along as we go on this massive transition. It's clear, we're today at something like 200 gigawatts of renewable energy installed capacity. It's going to grow 6 times. Even today, if we are struggling to get skilling and things like this right, the sort of the enormity of the job that is in front of us, it's and really at WRI, I think just I know Deepak sort of gave you the broader context. Really we are today trying to think about how do we make these transitions, one on energy, the other on cities and urbanization, and the third on food systems, which is so highly going to get impacted with climate change. How do we really make these positive transformations that will help us to get to 1.5, be nature positive, at the same time bring all of these people along and don't leave them behind. And so I think, and the thing is, especially for the energy transition, everything is really on an exponential ride, right? You're going to talk about wind growing 15 times, 10 terawatt hours of battery storage required in 20 years, where today we have pretty much nothing. And so how do we really, it's what is it going to take us to make this massive exponential transition, and it's going to require a range of things. I think we just heard somebody speak mostly on the utility sides and the reforms that are required. All of this is going to happen in fast changing technology environment, and how do we then make innovation a part of this sort of exponential change? And we can't prepare for it, but at least how do we build that kind of environment? How do we create the trade and fiscal environment, how do we create the regulatory environment for us to be able to really absorb this exponential change. And I think so at WRI, few things we have done, we do, and this is hopefully over the next 2-3 days deliberation, we'll also get feedback. We've been building tools, so we have a tool that sort of helps model the India Energy Policy Simulator models policy scenarios out to 2047, and then for net zero 2070. I think what are the policy options? We have the Energy Access Explorer, which actually helps us think about distributed renewable energy and how to prioritize where we should make the choices or where we should make the investments. We're going to talk about a battery circulatory platform that we're going to launch later. So one thing we do is really build these platforms, and really, eventually it's for the ecosystem to use, and so would love your feedback. We work very closely with states. I think some of the conversations will follow. I think there again, as we sort of, both learn from what we are doing, but also from several of you in the ecosystem who are working with other states and other partners, how can we together? There also we are aspiring to build this platform on the Energy Transition Preparedness Initiative. And I think, so one is, I think these platforms, so your feedback to us on that will be very, very useful. And then I think really thinking about how we can collaborate and work together, because I think, as I've already spoken, and I think everybody lays out how enormous the challenge is, and unless we are able to collaborate and come together, I don't think, we are going to be able to really assist this. So really hoping that this becomes an opportunity for us to share your work, for you to share your work, and then for us to explore opportunities where we can collaborate and work together. So with that, really sort of thanking all of you for being here, looking forward to the deliberations, and hopefully we can do more together to really sort of make this transition into a real positive transformation for the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madhav. Yeah, indeed, the people side is something where we need significant focus to shift towards. And, it is now my pleasure to invite Mr. Mozaharul Alam, the acting head of the United Nations Environment Program India Country Office, to provide the keynote address. Please welcome him with a big round of applause.
Okay, first of all, good morning. And it's really a great pleasure for me to talk in front of you. But before I start, let me also mention what we have already heard from the previous speakers. And they talked about climate change. I have heard the word circularity, and I was not aware the topic that I thought that I'm going to cover, and there is a working paper on the critical minerals that we are just going to launch, focusing on India. And also let me mention, in this room, I'm not quite sure the type of the topics that we are discussing today is new to many of you. Maybe you are already aware of the importance of the issues that we are talking about. But let me connect that, why I'm saying so, what Madhav mentioned about the taxi driver. How we are going to reach out to the people who actually need to know things, because they are going to do things on the ground. So I think in addition to the discussion that we are going to have here today on the technical aspect, but how to reach out to the people who will be doing things on the ground, like the taxi driver. So I'd like to start with that. So if we look into the different aspect of the accelerating the cleaner energy or the energy transition, we are using the different words, but I think what we mean is how to bring the clean energy in the energy mix so that we have the greater share in the energy mix, which will come from the renewable energy. The second aspect, when we are setting up those the energies in terms of the renewable, either the solar or the wind, the critical minerals that we are going to use in future, how to manage those minerals in a sustainable manner. So I will be talking primarily on that two aspects, and in the context of the global landscape. And if we just look into the global landscape in terms of the Conference of the Parties outcome, and we often refer the UAE consensus, which asking for tripling the renewable energy and doubling the energy efficiency at the global scale. So that does not necessarily mean that it is going to happen equally in every country, because the country's circumstances varied. But also it talks about accelerating efforts toward phasing down the coal power. They call it the unabated. You can have all kinds of the debate and spend maybe a week, what do we mean by unabated, the coal in the power plant. But also the transitioning away from the fossil fuel, the energy system, and that is one of the critical elements when we are talking about accelerating the cleaner energy, because it is asking for transitioning us away from the fossil fuel. That includes the coal, that includes the other form of the fossil fuels. Now, within that context, we also have the next year where the countries are going to submit their updated nationally determined contribution. So how much our research, how much our advocacy effort is triggering the countries to accept the higher ambition. And if we are able to support the country, showing that there are mechanisms through which they will be able to achieve the target, that is one of the critical elements for the countries to consider raising their ambition. Because it is not only the raising the ambition, but they also need the means to achieve the ambition. Is like what we have heard about the green bond, the blue bond, the disclosure. Those are very important aspects. And why we are basically requesting or urging countries to raise their ambition? Because unless we increase our ambition, the contribution committed by the countries are inadequate, and we all know that. And if we just look into what the assessment, including the IPCC and the UNEP emission gap reports, we are heading towards the 2.5 to the 2.9 degrees if we maintain our current commitments. So it is nowhere closer to the reduction we need to keep or limiting the temperature rise 1.5 degree or keeping it below 2 degree, whichever the target that we are talking about. So we don't have that adequate commitment. So the inadequacies are very much there. Now, when we talk about also the energy transition, the current discussions primarily focusing on the two areas. One is on the supply side, meaning that is the generation that we need to do, but also in terms of the sector, the transport sector is one of the important. And if we look into the transport sector, the whole discussion is happening on the e-mobility. Why the transport sector is important? About the 14% of the greenhouse gas emission is coming from the transport sector. And if we look into only the vehicular part of the transport, it is the bus, the truck, then it's basically we are talking about the 74% of the emission coming from that particular area of the fleets that we are talking about. So it is important to look into also not only the supply side of the energy, bringing the renewable energy, but also looking into the sector that is also moving very fast in terms of transitioning the energy through either the battery or talking about the hydrogen. Lots of talk happening on whether the green hydrogen or the hydrogen is basically the same. So we also need to look into what kind of the energy that we are using to charge the vehicle. if we are using the energy in the current energy mix, then it's probably we are shifting the pollution aspect coming from the car, but it is not helping the global greenhouse gas emission. So the charging system also need to come from the renewable energy if we would like to see the greater and the full potential of the transitioning of the transport to the battery or the hydrogen. Now, obviously, India is an important country globally. It's not only that they are one of the high emitting countries in terms of the greenhouse gases, but if we look into the population and growth of the low and the middle income, the generation in the country, the demand is increasing. It's not only the area of the transport, but it's also area of the building, and that also the another area in terms of bringing the efficiency in the building sectors. Not only the energy consumption, but also in the context of the material that we are using. So that is the another aspect that we also need to consider. And obviously, if we look into the transport sector and the electric mobility, in addition to the material part, obviously it brings the better environment in terms of the air pollution, improving the air quality. Obviously, it also helping in terms of the cost. If we look into the long-term cost of the electric vehicle, it reduces also the personal cost. In addition, obviously, it also provides the opportunity to create more jobs. So that is also important. But let me end what I mentioned in the critical minerals. And unless we see how we are going to manage is not only the benefits that we are talking about the critical minerals, but how we are going to manage the critical minerals in the context of bringing the circularity aspect. And we have heard that the circularity aspect from the speakers as well. Now, when we are talking about these critical minerals, we are talking about mainly the lithium, copper, cobalt, graphite, the nickel, and the other metals. And if we look into the assessment done by the World Bank, what it is saying that it would require 3 billion tons of minerals and the materials to deploy the necessary technology to limit the global warming below 2 degrees by 2050. So it is not the small amount of the critical minerals that we are talking about. It's a huge amount that we are talking about. Now, if we look into not the India, because we already have a paper in front of us, but if we look into globally, that the 70% of the mining output is processed in Asia and the Pacific, the region, particularly if we look into the countries called the Asia Economic Cooperation. So that is the concentration in terms of processing and consuming these critical minerals. And what we are also seeing in terms of these critical minerals, the new groups are emerging. So it is like when the world was doing all the business in terms of the energy on the fossil fuel, we have OPEC. Now in the critical minerals, this is also the new groups are emerging in the region. So we also need to look into how those groups are going to set the norms when they're mining, when they are managing the environmental aspect of the critical minerals. So with that, let me just end what UNEP is aiming right now to do in the context of both the critical minerals. We are in a part of the Secretary General's group who are dealing with the critical minerals. So UNEP is one of the members among other UN agencies. In terms of the electric mobility, the electric vehicle, UNEP is supporting 60 countries, including India, on the technical assistance and the capacity building and the policy deployment so that we are able to deal with not only the air pollution part of it, but the whole chain of the electric mobility. In India, we are collaborating with a number of agencies, including the Asian Development Bank, as well as Niti Aayog, who is the policy, the planning body in India. So we are working with them. particularly looking into what kind of the policy environment is required, what kind of the capacity building is required, so that we are able to cover the entire cycle of the electric mobility, not only the one part of the electric mobility. So with that, I'd like to thank once again for inviting UNEP to talk. And looking forward to learn more from all of you. But let me reiterate what I mentioned, that we need to go out of this, the cohort who knows the things, is to reach out the people who need to learn more, because they will be doing the implementation on the ground. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Alam, for concluding with that, and also for actually talking about the socio-environmental impact of critical minerals, not just in India, but also globally. And I would encourage our audience to grab a copy of the recently just launched paper, which is kept outside at the entrance as well. And I think, like Bharat mentioned, we are very honored that despite his hectic schedule, Shripad Naik, who is the Honorable Minister of State for Power and New and Renewable Energy, has sent across a recorded message for us, which we will hear. And just let me just introduce him. Of course, Shripad Naik has held several key portfolios in the government of India, which include the Minister of State for Ports, Shipping and Waterways, as well as the Minister of State Independent Charge for the Ministry of Tourism and Culture, as well as Ayush. So let's play the recorded message now.
Namaskar, esteemed panelists, guests and friends. It gives me immense pleasure to attend the inaugural session of the World Resource Institute via video conference and extend my hearty congratulations to WRI. We all know that we are standing at a pivotal moment in history where the realities of climate change are more evident than ever. The consequences of the climate change are not confined to any one nation, that transcend borders and demand a unified global response. Renewable energy is the most viable solution to address this most urgent and global issue. Renewable energy is now not just an option, but a necessity for the sustainable and resilient future. Friends, as you are aware, India has announced very ambitious target as a part of its net zero plan. Among other things, we are aiming to achieve 500 gigawatts of the non-fossil based electricity installed capacity by 2030, and I am happy to inform you that we are making remarkable strides in this direction. Friends, self-reliance in energy is our ultimate objective. To achieve this, the government has offered productive linked incentive scheme that have proved effective and attracting the strong industry interest. I would like to emphasize that the India's successful energy transition will really greatly on extensive collaboration with our partners in the industry, business, academia, and other stakeholders. This will be essential to driving scale, creating the demand signals, unlocking the investment, minimizing the risks, and informing policy making. The use of minimal resources while maximizing the resources use is the key to our strategy of growing sustainability, and we are committed towards the same. I wish the World Resources Institute India 2 days of meaningful and successful deliberation on this issue of extreme significance. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir, for your key remarks. And now to conclude this inaugural session, I would like to invite Jennifer Layke to provide the closing remarks. Jennifer is the Global Director of Energy at the World Resources Institute and leads a growing team of energy specialists around the world in deploying energy efficiency, renewable energy, and energy access solutions. So over to you.
Thank you all for your opening remarks and to all of you for joining us. I wanted to help ground us for the rest of the time that we're here together. We've had an amazing opening session, really focusing on what I would consider our agenda of the day, the I agenda, the interconnected agenda of institutional shifts towards innovation, investment, inspiration in India. So for me, the comments that you've all shared help link those I agendas into a we agenda. We need to collectively manage for business practice shifts. We've discussed this now with regards to the kind of data, disclosure, engagement, and transformation of our business investment models. We've looked at how we develop the incentives for new ways of making investment available to parts of our society for specific outcomes, such as the difference in these bond products that are now being developed. So it's not just about disclosing the data, it's about building and ensuring that it gets used by the communities that have the ability to act based on that information. The second thing we talked about was around the innovation agenda, thinking about how we navigate the change agenda with regards to the impact that it can have, both negative and positive impact, but recognizing that that innovation agenda is a disruptive agenda. It's disruptive to our business as usual practices. It's disruptive to the incumbent technologies, and it's disruptive to the expectations that we have around what pathways we're on and what risks we're taking. And I think we can't underestimate the perception of risk as a potential threat to all of our ability to act. So managing and navigating innovation in an environment where the risk and the recognition of the opportunities and the potential disruption needs to be part of our agenda for today. And I'm really pleased that we're thinking about this as well in the conversations around how we inspire. We've talked about the NDCs and the changes that need to happen in MDCs to up the ambition, to give us that vision of the pathway, connecting the technical, the innovation agenda, connecting the information around investment opportunity, and building for that inspired view that there is a path forward, that we can, with the right disclosures and with the right analysis, that we can move to an inspired agenda that allows us to achieve our interconnected goals. And we started with the interconnectedness of our goals. So I believe that through the conversations that we've had this morning, we're setting ourselves up to very carefully address the I and the we in our agenda towards change. Thank you all for joining us for this opening session. Thank you to our amazing speakers and panel for giving us the keys to making that shift, to upping our ambition, and to managing to create an inspired India for innovative transition. Thank you.